And those differences would make the analysis afterwards much, much more difficult. So you have to define how you want to enter the data. So it's usually better to get a list where you can click all those options.
Hello and welcome to this next episode of All Things Angioedema, ATAE, your podcast about angioedema. If you want to learn about this, listen to this podcast. My name is Thomas Buttgereit. I'm your host of this podcast, and in today's episode, we have a special guest here. It's neither a patient nor a physician. It's someone else, but he is a scientist and he's a researcher as well. And he's working in the ACARE Berlin. And it's my pleasure to have him here in this podcast episode. So welcome, Felix.
Hi, Thomas. My name is Felix Aulenbacher, and I studied bioinformatics, so it's a completely different field. And I'm here in the team since about 3 years and doing a lot of statistics and also data management. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here today.
Great. So can you tell us a bit, where did you study your profession and what were your interests in your studies?
I studied at the FU Berlin a few years ago, and my interests were that I don't wanted to study just simple informatics. I wanted to find a field which has more the scientific part inside. And after my work and travel year in New Zealand, I was like, okay, I have to look for a cool field to study. And yeah, that's how I got to bioinformatics, because I was interested in biological stuff and medicine parts in the school. And then I started to study bioinformatics. And the cool thing is that you have on the one side all the lab data which you can analyze, and all those parts which are usually inside of films, but you also have the more near to person part where you just analyze simple medical data to find new information out of it.
So Felix, when did you graduate actually? In which year was it?
I think it was in 2021.
2021. So maybe for all the young people who are planning maybe to study this, what you have done, what could these people expect? How does the work of a statistician or data manager as you are look like? So maybe can you maybe describe a bit on your daily work, what you do and how we should really think it looks like what you're doing?
So in general, we are a big team out of physicians and study nurses and all the stuff behind, and some people from the statistic part. And usually it's like mostly the physicians ask me, can you help me to analyze my data? Or I want to do this study. How can I do this? So one part is to plan all those studies. So I have to do sample size calculations. So I get the idea behind it. Then we find the primary endpoint. That's important because if you want to compare at the end two groups, maybe from a patient and a cohort, you have to get good marker, which you can say, okay, it's at this point, it's different. So you have two different kinds of angioedema. You have to find the right parameters, and then you have to calculate how many patients do you need to find those differences.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a big effect, if you expect there's a big effect, you can make the sample size much smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think there maybe is an effect that there's a difference, then you have to make bigger sample sizes. And that's one important step.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is to build those databases. So of course you can create all those questions and you can ask some stuff, but you have to think about what should I ask and how should I ask it, and then you have to implement it. So for example, if we take the height from persons,
For an angioedema person,
for example, then you can type it inside a database with 1 meter 20 centimeters, or some write down 100 centimeters, some write it with a comma, some with a dot, and those differences would make the analysis afterwards much, much more difficult. So you have to define how you want to enter the data. So it's usually better to get a list where you can click all those options. And of course, if you name your questions in the right way, there's a standard called SDTM standard. In the right way, you have it much easier to analyze it later. And if I'm getting the data at the end, I want to make it as good and as quick as possible. So if I prepare the data at the beginning much better, the analysis part is much easier. And yeah, that's what I'm doing at this point. So I'm getting a database from a finished study, and then it's like, okay, try to find something. And sometimes there's a clear step-by-step part where I can say, okay, I have to do this. I have to make the descriptive statistics at first, and then I have to do some analysis. But sometimes it's more like, okay, I have the database, but I have no idea what to do with it. Just find something. And then I have to look at the data and I have to try to find something at the
And this is exploratory. Does it mean exploratory
Yes,
data analysis?
Correct.
Okay. So I could imagine that you are sitting quite a long time in front of a computer display and you need help with programs or special software that guides you through this analysis and gives you all the output you need. So what are typical programs you are working with?
Usually, I'm working with R, which is a statistical program, but with R, I can visualize really, really good those plots, and I can do all those, especially from the physicians liked p-values with different tests. But of course, it's not only about p-values, even if the physician says it's the best way to interpret some data. But there are so many, many more methods. There are, of course, the descriptive methods where you can find tendencies, especially if you have just really small data, that you can see, okay, there might be effect between two groups. So let's go in the next study in more detail on those values. There are also cluster analysis, which means that you put in all your data at once or a set of your data, and based on all your data, you try to find differences between two groups because they are clustering in some kind of way. Then there are correlation methods. You try to find, so for example, if the person has much more weight, then it's typically the person also have more height, for example. There's could be a correlation between this, which makes sense in this way because if the person is higher, they usually rate more. So, and with those correlation methods, you can find also tendencies between, for example, patients and control groups. But there are also regression methods where you can find odds between
What is odds?
So the ratio, for example, that you have a much higher chance that the patient has some other kind of disease because you have angioedema, for example. And then you try to find patterns in this, and you can say it's a kind of machine learning or the first step of machine learning in general.
Okay, that's interesting. So as you know, we are an angioedema podcast. Yeah, we are all interested in angioedema, and you also see the data just from the data analysis perspective. But for us physicians who treat these patients, we see more the symptoms and want also to learn what are the differences between the different types of angioedema, mast cell mediated, HAE, drug induced. And you mentioned a lot of different techniques that we learned about. But is there any technique you frequently use or maybe have used recently which helps to learn more about the different types of angioedema?
I had a really, really cool project about 2 years ago. It's called 10 Questions, and the project began, I think, 6 or 7 years ago. And there, a group of specialized physicians created 10 questions, which they gave to their patients, and they should answer them. The most of them were yes, no questions. So really, really simple and fast questions to answer.
Maybe do you know one, the most important, or maybe all of them were important, but maybe one you kept in your mind?
I mean, the most important in the later machine learning process was definitely, I think, when did you when did your angioedema start?
Okay.
I think this was the most important question. But I mean, there are different questions for different subtypes for the medication and stuff like this. To be honest, I'm the bioinformatician, so I often forgot about the questions,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to find the patterns, and that's why, it's a little bit different today. But yeah, it was the cool thing from the study was that the patients were asked first, and afterwards the physicians answered which kind of angioedema the patients had or have. Based on this data, my boss told me try to find a cool pattern out of it, and I was like, okay, let's do it with machine learning. And I used a method which is called, or I used a model which is called the random forest model. I programmed it in R as well with the library carrot. And yeah, those forest models work like you're building, you're creating different sets from all your answers you have, and you try to diagnose based on those selected questions which subtype von angioedema it probably is. And you do it multiple times. For each run, or for all the runs together, there will be a majority vote. And based on this majority vote, you can say, okay, it's probably the hereditary angioedema or other kind of angioedema. And yeah, I had really, really much fun with this project. You can try it on our website. And yeah,
So it's a 10-question tool. So people out there, if you're interested to find out what angioedema type you have, 10 questions on the ACARE website would be something very interesting. Felix, I have another question. I think everyone is now talking about artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. This will revolutionize our lives. Do you already make use of ChatGPT or other programs in your daily working life?
yes, a lot. It changed completely since ChatGPT is on the market, because especially while programming, you can do it much, much faster than typing everything on your own. But it's the challenging part is to do it in the right way, because if you do something with ChatGPT, you always have to control everything, and you have to make sure that this data you enter and those methods are correct. So I can do my analysis much, much more faster, but I always have to think about, okay, what is the right next step? And if we do it in the better way, you get a better output. And I think that's a big problem in general with ChatGPT and those methods. If you don't use it right, you can get a lot of misinformation.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's why we created another really cool tool, which is based on ChatGPT, but with our own paper. We call it AIDOS, and we are using our own database. So we are using the algorithm from ChatGPT, and then we created a huge database on publications from our team, because in this way we can say, okay, it's definitely the right information, and then we can ask our chatbot questions, and yeah, we can.
And for which indication? Is it angioedema, including angioedema?
I think it's primarily for urticaria in general.
Yeah.
We can go on specific subtypes. So we can you can program it like this, that he just answer for specific subtypes.
Mhm.
Right now, it's more for,
Yeah, but I would say anyway, angioedema is a common phenomenon in urticaria patients. So maybe I should try this one and ask for angioedema, this chatbot AIDOS.
yes. I think the only problem right now is that there are some data right stuff like this, because it's not 100% clear when is an algorithm and when should it be a medical
Yeah.
product and stuff like this. So it works really well, but always if you ask something, a chatbot, questions about the medication and stuff like this, it's always tricky. So you have to be careful with this. We are working on it, and probably we will find a solution. The field is changing.
Let's see what comes out of this project AIDOS. Maybe final question, Felix, and this is maybe the most tricky one for you. That came to my mind. We're talking about ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, and you're working with a lot of data, and as you said, artificial intelligence can help you quite a lot with this and changed your life. Do you see your profession as a statistician and a data manager somehow at risk from this technology of artificial intelligence? So what is your outlook, your personal outlook? It's just opinion, you know, but what do you think about the development in this area for your profession?
I think, yes, definitely it's a tricky question, and there's no clear answer. On one side, yes, it's a threat to my working field, but on the other side, it's a huge opportunity to make everything much better. So in my opinion, if you use it in the right way, if you try to use it always, and if you read a lot about it, and if you check everything, you will get much better results out of it, and you can analyze more data much more faster. And yeah, so we can do really much with it, but if someone is too lazy, or if someone just wants to do it a little bit, then at some point probably everyone can do this. So yeah, there's no clear answer, but from my side, because I think I can use it really well, it shouldn't be a threat, but you never know.
You never know. Let's see what the future brings to us. Felix, it was my pleasure talking to you, especially from this perspective, not looking that emotionally on angioedema, you know, just from the perspective as we have data and we need to analyze and make comparisons and find differences using different techniques we all learned and heard about today in this episode. So thank you very much for your time and expanding a bit on this and providing your knowledge in this field. And people out there, if you have any questions to me or to Felix about the techniques we talked about, or maybe projects we also, and Felix also talked briefly about, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are really happy to answer all your questions. And with this, we would like to thank you for your attention, and we wish you a great day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.